Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South. All right then, let's get started on the show this week. Nepal returns to calm as first woman Prime Minister takes charge after the protests against corruption, nepotism and oligarchy fire the imagination of a generation of Gen Z. Sushila Karki's appointment carries both symbolic weight and the promise of change. And Netanyahu goes it alone and goes for the kill in Qatar and Yemen in a bid to arrange the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle that is the new Middle East by eliminating threats from Hamas, Hezbollah and Houthis and destroying the axis of resistance led by Iran. All that and much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. It is said that a week is a long time in politics, and it's true for Nepal. The Himalayan Republic, sandwiched between India and Tibet, has a new interim government. A former Chief Justice, Sushila Karki, has been sworn in as Prime Minister. Parliament has been dissolved and an election has been called for 5th March 2026. It marks the culmination of a week-long anti-corruption protest by Gen Z, the loose umbrella title of the youth movement. Justice Karki has two firsts to her name. She is the first woman Chief Justice of Nepal and now the first woman Prime Minister of the country. The manner in which she was chosen is equally interesting. More than half of Nepal's 30 million people are online. No wonder then that social media has driven demands for change. A US-based app called Discord is particularly popular with Gen Z. Now, Discord is a free app for voice, video and text communication, allowing users to connect with others in private messages or within large online communities known as servers. Originally popular with gamers, it has expanded to become a versatile tool for people with shared hobbies and interests to form communities. Now, this is how it works. Users can join or create servers which are organized into text and voice channels for real-time communication, file sharing and screen sharing. Gen Z protesters formed a community called Youths Against Corruption on Discord to organize and vote for the Prime Minister. That's how Sushila Karki was picked for the post. And that's how Nepal went from discord to accord. Now, every which way you look at it, Nepal is a story that's captivated the world. Our protests against corruption, made worse by a social media ban, snowballed into a full-blown popular uprising, toppling the government and igniting calls for real change. How did Nepal get here? And more importantly, where does it go from here? The next report has the answers for you.
Sri Lanka 2022, Bangladesh 2024, Mongolia May 2025, Indonesia August 2025, and now Nepal. Generation Z, the digital natives born between the mid-1990s and early 2010s, who make up a huge chunk of Nepal's population, have been protesting for many months about corruption and nepotism. Their anger was directed against the children of politicians whose lavish lifestyles contrasted spectacularly with that of the average Nepalese youth. Social media was full of images of Nepo kids and their private jets, luxury cars and exotic vacations, while ordinary families scraped by. Then came the spark that lit the fuse. On the 4th of September, Nepal's government, led by Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, imposed a sweeping ban on 26 popular social media platforms. We're talking Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, and X, tools that 90% of Nepal's population rely on for everything from staying connected with family abroad to running small businesses and sharing news. Nepal's per capita income hovers around $1,400 per year, and with youth unemployment soaring, social media was a lifeline for young people dreaming of better opportunities. The government claimed that the platforms failed to register under new regulations aimed at curbing fake news, hate speech, and online fraud. But the Gen Z and human rights groups saw it as a blatant power grab to silence dissent. The ban felt like the final straw, cutting off their voices just as they were amplifying these inequalities.
You see, a third of the Nepalese people live and work abroad. They have seen the kind of progress other countries have made. And so they are questioning that, so many other countries, including in our neighborhood, are doing well. They have increased their living standards rapidly. Why is it that Nepal is not growing as fast as they would like it to grow? Why is it that Nepal is not able to create the jobs to accommodate the young people or to meet the aspirations of the young people? So these are the issues that are bothering the protesters.
On 7th September, activists such as Sudan Gurung, the 36-year-old president of a youth-led NGO called Hami Nepal, rallied his troops via still-open apps such as TikTok and Viber. Gurung, a former event organizer who turned to activism after losing his child in the 2015 earthquake, urged students to protest peacefully, wear school uniforms, carry books, and march to symbolize education over violence. Hami Nepal, which focused on disaster relief and youth empowerment, had already built a network through Instagram and Discord, sharing safety tips and routes. And so, on 8th September, thousands of Gen Z protesters, mostly teens and young adults, gathered in Kathmandu's Maithigar Mandala, a bustling square near the Parliament building. The protests quickly morphed into something bigger. Protesters surged towards the Parliament complex, occupying a security building in a bold show of defiance. But the response was brutal. Police fired tear gas, rubber bullets, water cannons, and according to Amnesty International and the UN, live ammunition as well. At least 51 people have been killed and more than 1,300 injured. Hospitals overflowed. Protesters ferried the wounded on motorcycles. Curfews were slapped on parts of Kathmandu, Pokhara, and Rupandehi. But the anger only grew. The UN Human Rights Office called it shocking and demanded a probe into the disproportionate use of force. By the 9th, the protests had exploded into a nationwide anti-government storm. No tsunami, an avalanche that came hurtling down, destroying everything in its path. Everything. Nothing and no one was spared. The president's estate was looted. The prime minister's residence was vandalized. The parliament was targeted. The country's top court was attacked. Government ministers were chased down and assaulted. Finance Minister Vishnu Prasad Podal was kicked, stripped nearly naked, and chased into a river. Prime Minister Oli's private residence was set on fire. Former Nepal Prime Minister and Maoist leader Pushpakamal Dehal Prachanda's house was ransacked. Another former Prime Minister and Nepali Congress leader Sher Bahadur Duba and his wife were almost lynched. Hilton Kathmandu, the tallest hotel in Nepal, was burnt to ashes. Car showrooms were vandalized, and the headquarters of Kantipur Publications, the publishers of Nepal's largest selling newspaper, the Nepali language Kantipur, and the Kathmandu Post, one of the largest English language newspapers in the country, was set on fire. The trigger for this deadly turn was the police crackdown on the 8th, which protesters saw as proof of an oligarchy protecting its own. The International Crisis Group called it a major inflection point in the country's uneasy experience with democratic rule. Unrest had been brewing for some time. People had had enough of decades of elite corruption. Scandals such as the 2017 Airbus deal that cost Nepal $10.4 million, or endless headlines about politicians' kids flaunting wealth amid 7.5% of the population working abroad as migrant labor only fueled the discontent. An opinion piece in the Himalayan Times newspaper published from Kathmandu calls the Pokhara International Airport a symbol of financial mismanagement. The airport, funded by a 20-year loan from China's Export-Import Bank and built by a Chinese state-owned engineering firm, has become a financial burden, a white elephant. The loan from China Exim Bank has become an economic strain, with the airport generating insufficient revenue to meet debt obligations. Another scandal that rocked Nepal was the distribution of fake Bhutanese refugee identity cards to Nepal citizens so that they could be resettled in the US.
The problem is not that, the democratic system is at fault. The problem is that those who are entrusted for implementing this system, which is the leaders. So the anger is against the leaders, the leaders who have become corrupt, self-serving, and as you say, it's the same leaders who keep on becoming prime minister every time. So people have lost hope.
The social media ban was lifted on the 8th, but it was too little too late. The 73-year-old four-time Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli was forced to step down. The Nepal army was deployed to patrol the streets and appeal for calm. By 10 September, a fragile normalcy had returned, with soldiers enforcing curfews and helping stranded foreigners. Mass jailbreaks were reported amid the chaos. A former Deputy Prime Minister, Rabi Lamichhane, was freed from the Nakhu jail. Once a constitutional monarchy under King Birendra, Nepal was a Hindu kingdom sandwiched between India and China. But the 1990s brought turmoil. A Maoist insurgency from 1996 to 2006 killed more than 17,000 people. It demanded an end to the monarchy. In 2001, Crown Prince Dipendra's massacre wiped out the royal family, thrusting Gyanendra into the throne. He seized absolute power in 2005, but mass protests in 2006 forced him to restore parliament. That paved the way for the 2008 abolition of the monarchy, turning Nepal into a federal republic via a new constitution in 2015. Oli, a communist hardliner from the CPN-UML party, has been a key player in this era, serving 3 prior terms since 2015, often in unstable coalitions. His latest stint, starting July 2024, promised stability but delivered more of the same, infighting, economic woes, and accusations of authoritarianism, like past social media bans and draft laws imposing a fine for anti-national speech. Oli upset New Delhi by publishing a map of Nepal that showed Lipu Lake as Nepal's territory. He further provoked New Delhi by picking China over India for his first overseas visit. Oli Chor, Desh Chod, Oli Thief, Leave the Country, became a rallying cry.
No system is perfect. And this system was designed in 2015 when the last constitution was adopted. And there are some issues relating to, why do you have so many changes of governments? Why is there no political stability? I'm sure the people of Nepal will see, in case, things have to change in the constitution, they will do it. But, the fundamental goal and desire of the people is for democracy. And that is something that India has always supported and will continue to support.
These Gen Z protests mark a shift. Unlike the Maoist rebellion, this is youth-led, tech-savvy, and leaderless at its core. Though figures such as Gurung and Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah have emerged as unlikely heroes.
नेता जति सबै चोर देश लुटी खाछन् आमाको साडीमा कटु सोची मुतिराछन् खाने बेला एक गर्ने बेला फुटिराछन् कांग्रेस नेमाले नाउबादी सबै मिली घुमी देश खाऊ बाडी हामी.
The fury feels homegrown, inspired by uprisings in Bangladesh 2024 and Sri Lanka 2022. Globally, this is a wake-up call.
We have to make the youth the fulcrum, the center point of our approach, not only to Nepal, but in the entire neighborhood. So we should have a youth-centric foreign policy. We must engage the youth, reach out to the youth. We must be active on social media. We should develop attractive and interesting programs from the perspective of the youth. And I think developments in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, in Nepal have shown how critical this Gen Z is and how important it is that we are engaged not only with the traditional political parties, we will continue to do that, and step up our engagement and cultural exchanges, etc. But I think it's very important that we should focus on the young people.
Nepal reminds us that from the Arab Spring to Hong Kong, from Sri Lanka and Bangladesh to Mongolia and Indonesia, digital generations won't tolerate opacity or oligarchy.
Two recent developments could reshape the power dynamics in West Asia, or the Middle East as some would like to call it. One, Israel's daring airstrike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. And two, a bold shift in Israel's strategy against the Houthis in Yemen. Now, these are not isolated events. They are a piece of a larger puzzle, one where Israel is aggressively pursuing what some call a new Middle East, free from the threats that have haunted it for decades. It's been nearly 2 years since the 7th October 2023 Hamas attacks in Israel, which killed more than 1,200 people, mostly civilians. More than 200 were taken hostage. The attacks shattered the fragile calm and ignited a war in Gaza, which has claimed more than 64,000 Palestinian lives. Women and children make up around half the dead. Israel responded by vowing to dismantle the so-called axis of resistance led by Iran, which comprises Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen. It has bombed 4 capitals in Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Yemen, and now a 5th in Qatar. It goes to show just how far Israel is willing to go. Let's begin with the Israeli strikes in Qatar. On 9 September, explosions rocked Qatar's capital Doha. As part of an operation codenamed Summit of Fire, Israeli jets dropped precision munitions on a residential compound in the upscale West Bay Lagoon area. The target was a meeting of top Hamas leaders, including Khalil al-Hayya, the group's exiled Gaza chief and lead negotiator for ceasefire talks. A lot of planning would have gone into the execution of these strikes. Israel knew that the Hamas leaders were in Doha discussing a US-sponsored ceasefire proposal. So the Israeli intelligence would have been tracking the Hamas delegation for weeks. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz greenlit the operation just hours after Hamas fighters carried out a deadly attack in Jerusalem on 8 September, in which 6 Israelis were killed. The jets took off from bases in Israel, flew low to evade radar, and struck within seconds, all 10 bombs hitting their mark. Israel called it a quote-unquote precise strike, but apparently it missed the intended targets and killed 6 others instead. Al-Hayya's son, his office manager, 3 other Hamas affiliates, and a Qatari security officer. An unspecified number of civilians were injured too. After all, the neighborhood is full of expat families and embassies. Incidentally, the attack site is located barely 2 kilometers from the hotel where US President Donald Trump stayed when he visited Qatar in the month of May. Was the operation successful? Now, that's a question that Trump asked Netanyahu too. Netanyahu's answer, according to the Wall Street Journal, was, "I don't know." But Hamas claims that its senior leaders, including al-Haya, survived the Israeli attacks. The group called it a failed assassination. For his part, Netanyahu took full responsibility for the strikes. He said it was entirely an Israeli operation, and he justified it by saying that the strikes were aimed at those who were behind the 7th October 2023 massacre. Israel accuses al-Haya, who took over after Ismail Haniyeh's assassination in Tehran last year, of stalling the ceasefire talks and prolonging the war. Now, Israel might have missed the target, but they delivered the message loud and clear that Hamas's political wing, once untouchable in Doha, is not safe anywhere. The psychological blow of Israel hitting the heart of Hamas's command structure abroad is massive and of another order of magnitude.
There was a time when Jews could be murdered with impunity. But since the founding of the State of Israel, those days are over.
The backlash was swift. Qatar called it a cowardly act and a violation of its sovereignty. Now, Qatar's predicament is understandable. It is a U.S. security partner, a major non-NATO ally, and home to the largest U.S. military base in West Asia. It's also heavily involved in the Gaza ceasefire talks. Even the U.S. under Trump expressed rare disapproval. Trump said that unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the U.S. that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. He was quick to add, though, that eliminating Hamas, who have profited of the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. Trump says that he was notified of the attack and that his special envoy in turn had informed Qatar. But by then, the Israeli jets were already in the air. It was too late to stop it. Now, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Turkey and the UN all condemned it as a breach of international law. The UAE, which normalized its ties with Israel under the Abraham Accords of 2020, called it blatant and cowardly. The Qatar strikes should be seen as the latest in a series of the bold and extraterritorial operations carried out by Israel. But, and this is an important but, unlike past operations in hostile turf such as Iran or Syria, the strikes in Qatar hit a U.S. ally's capital city. To that extent, it is unprecedented. The Bloomberg news agency reported that the Qatar bombing shows Israel's belief that strength will win out. It says many Israelis, especially those leading and supporting the Netanyahu government, believe that peace will only come from strength and that defeating Hamas, its affiliates and their Iranian sponsor is the way to do it. The Jerusalem Post says something similar. It quotes Dan Diker, the president of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, as saying that the Qatar strikes were a declaration that the rules of engagement have changed.
We went after the terrorist masterminds who committed the October 7th massacre. And we did so in Qatar, which gives safe haven. It harbors terrorists. It finances Hamas. It gives its terrorist chieftains sumptuous villas. It gives them everything. So we did exactly what America did when it went after the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda terrorists, in Afghanistan, and after they went and killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. And I say to Qatar and all nations who harbor terrorists, you either expel them or you bring them to justice. Because if you don't, we will.
So the Qatar strikes fit a pattern of decapitation of breaking the axis led by Iran, which comprises the Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. And that brings us to Yemen, where Israel's strategy against the Iran-backed rebels who control Yemen's north is evolving even more dramatically. For months, the Houthis have fired missiles at Israel and disrupted Red Sea shipping in solidarity with Gaza. In March 2025, the U.S. launched a military campaign against Houthi targets in Yemen. The operation, codenamed Rough Rider, ended on 6th May. It remains the largest U.S. military operation in West Asia during Trump's second term in office. Israel too has carried out similar attacks targeting Yemen's infrastructure such as ports and power plants. But Israel is changing tack. Now its strategy is to assassinate Houthi leaders. On 28th August, Israeli jets struck a Houthi meeting in Sana'a, killing Prime Minister Ahmed al-Rahawi, 9 ministers and 2 top officials, 12 in all. Al-Rahawi, a symbolic figurehead, was the highest profile kill yet, marking Israel's shift from degrading capabilities to eliminating command. Why the change? Well, for one, destroying Yemen's infrastructure didn't really deter the Houthis. Case in point, the Houthis withstood Saudi Arabia-led bombings for years. But assassinations sow chaos and signal that no one is safe. Gaza and Lebanon are good examples. Israel decimated Hamas's underground tunnels, killing its leaders, and Hezbollah lost Nasrallah and thousands of rockets, forcing it to agree to a ceasefire. Now, the third H, Houthis, are in Israel's crosshairs. It's the last piece of Iran's proxy puzzle. This ties into Israel's grand vision of a new Middle East. Israel has already ensured that Bashar al-Assad's fall in Syria cuts Iran's land bridge. By neutralizing the last of the 3 H's, Israel aims to further isolate Iran and secure its interests in the wider region. It's an audacious strategy every which way you look at it. Critics say it's an endless war, but Israel calls it survival. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz has vowed to inflict biblical plagues on Yemen's Houthis. He invoked the 10 disasters that the book of Exodus says were inflicted on Egypt by the Hebrew God to convince the pharaohs to free the enslaved Israelites. But the question is, will any or all of this, the unprecedented Israeli strikes against Hamas leaders in Qatar and the shift in Israel's strategy against Houthis in Yemen, forge peace or ignite a war? In this high-stakes game, will Israel be able to arrange the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle that is the new Middle East? Watch this space. And with that, it's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.